as you know, this is Measure of an Episode.
Is it?
As you know, this is Measure of an Episode.
I believe it's the measure of an episode.
I said that.
Oh, okay.
Did I not say that?
No, it sounded very slight. It sounded like you said measure of an episode.
Where our continuing mission is to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a proper Star Trek episode and not just good or bad TV, based on 3 criteria. And Jonathan, what are those criteria?
The first criteria is, does it have something sci-fi or Star Trekian inherent to the plot? The second one is there a moral or ethical dilemma being discussed or debated? And the third one, we'll find out after this word from our sponsor.
We have no idea. That's why we're on this mission.
That's
to
right.
Discover.
Our mission is to discover the third element.
New criteria. Seek out.
Criteria.
Last week, or I guess, or yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this.
Or just a minute ago.
Yeah, we watched Enterprise Season 3, Episode 8, Twilight, which we thought was going to be a clip show, or the equivalent of a clip show. And it wasn't. It was a great episode.
It was, yeah.
I love this episode.
Yeah.
It checked almost all the boxes.
Yeah.
Checked 99 out of 100 boxes for me.
Right. The problem is that one kind of, at least for me, kind of makes it not a Star Trek episode.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what that is. It's still, for me, it's still like a Star Trek episode.
Okay.
A proper Star Trek. Yeah. So let me read the blurb. Refusing to leave a T'Pol behind, Archer is struck by an anomaly, leaving his brain infected with parasites that prevent him from making new memories. Which is kind of true.
Well, yeah, and what's nice about that is that has nothing to do with the cold open. So you know that the person who wrote that blurb did watch the episode, and yet still called it a T'Pol.
I didn't know a T'Pol. I mean, I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt, and that was just a typo of some kind. But how many people had to read that before it, got put into the episode? You know?
I personally, I think, given how many episodes of like TV, let alone Star Trek, there is on Netflix, there has maybe one person who reviews it, and if they're doing it in sequential order, by season 3, episode 8 of Star Trek Enterprise, they are now skimming these, and they're going, yeah, okay, that's a sentence that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a T'Pol.
Yeah.
It's not an T'Pol.
Right. Grammatically, it's like they're probably just doing that, looking for the red squiggle lines underneath or the blue ones.
No, Microsoft Word says it checks out. Send. So anyway, that aside, well, so it was interesting because the episode, once again, jumps right into the action. That was funny, though, because Archer is sleeping and he wakes up to intensely dramatic musical score. And that's tough to do because nothing is happening. And it's not like he's bumped awake,
right? I
don't think.
Well, there was a slight shake and there was a minor explosion.
Yeah, and the music's like, and he's just like, what's going on? Like, did I miss something? Did he leave? Is That's the new sound that comes on before the episode. Like, did he leave something on playing in the background? I expected him to like grab a remote and turn it off and then go back to sleep.
That's his alarm.
But anyway, so I thought it was going to be this 2 weeks earlier thing that happens where, because we see Earth get destroyed. I'm assuming that was Earth? Yes, that was Earth. We see Earth get destroyed.
Well, yeah. So for me, like the tension was awesome up until that point because Earth is still around in Next Generation and everything after this, like even the original series. So the moment we saw the Earth explode, I was like, all right, this is a dream, alternate reality. Like something is going to reset that because we know that's not what happened. So like as great as the opening was until it got to that point, I thought it was great. The moment it showed Earth explode, it lost all tension for me.
Yeah, I didn't do Next Generation exists, First Contact exists, so therefore it didn't render it inert to me.
Okay. The
fact that I knew those things, I actually was like, but it made me wonder. Actually, the whole episode, I was sort of saying, how are they going to get out of this? Like what? Because the episode basically takes place as T'Pol recounts what happens.
Right.
To Archer, she recounts sort of almost in voiceover what happens to how they got to that point.
Yes.
And it kind of turns into a Memento 51st Dates episode.
Yeah, oh my gosh, 51st Dates would have been so much better if it was framed this way. I think like she wakes up, like it ends with her waking up or it starts with her waking up on the boat, and she like comes out and sees him, and she's like, "Who the hell are you?" or whatever, and he's like, "Okay, this happens every morning. Let's sit down and talk."
She throws herself off the boat, starts swimming away from the boat.
I do want to say really quick before we go any further, this episode was actually supposed to be a Voyager episode with Archer and T'Pol being Janeway and Chakotay.
Well, interesting. I mean, I suppose it doesn't really change anything.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's obviously details within the episode that would have changed somewhat, but nothing.
Well, the character names, for one.
I would hope so.
And then, so after we see Earth get destroyed,
mm-hmm.
we see Archer wake up in his insurrection costume. And he's like an old guy. And actually, a very believable old Archer. Usually in these Star Trek shows, it's not great makeup. You're just sort of like, when you try and turn a 25-year-old into a 75-year-old, it just doesn't work out.
Right. Unless you're talking about the Inner Light, but yeah.
Well, I mean, he was already in his 50s.
Right.
That was easier. Like when they turn Ensign Kim, I'm sure Ensign Kim, I seem to remember Ensign Kim being old at a certain point. And it's just like, oh, you're dressed up for Halloween as an old person.
Yes.
And that's just what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
T'Pol. Let's talk about T'Pol real quick. So she has long hair in the future. Right. And they couldn't make her look old because Vulcans age much slower, or they just live longer, however you want to put it.
Right. So to show the passage of time, they grew her hair out. Right.
Which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was she was acting exactly like she acts in Enterprise, like contemporary Enterprise.
Sure.
Right?
She didn't soften up at all. Right.
Although I do like that she gave him a Vulcan haircut.
Yes. So that actually is a comment. They used the Vulcan ambassador that was in this episode. They used his wig for this, and they just trimmed it up a little bit. And so the fan theory is because she's Vulcan, that's the only haircut she knows.
She knows how to do.
Well, yeah, and it might also be the only haircut she's attracted to. So she's like, yeah, I like it when you wear your hair Vulcan style. But he can't argue. He's not going to remember. Well,
she doesn't. Yeah, and all she has to say is like, "You asked me that yesterday. Right. Like, you asked me to do that." And there is an inherent flaw in this kind of plot device where you wake up and you have developed no new memories for the last 25 years. So for the first 3 weeks of having this particular ailment or disease, that's probably a sustainable practice to sort of update you on what you've missed.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to 25 years and you're trying to update every time somebody wakes up,
mm-hmm.
you can't possibly update somebody on the last 25 years of what's happened, right? Either you're going to skip stuff and just confuse the hell out of whoever has this ailment, or you're just going to not talk about it and see what happens. Like, you'd have to experiment on what is the most sustainable way that we can continue this. Like, they can't, because they talk about it later in the episode where they brief Archer every single day on what's happening because they rely on his experience. That would be totally ineffective.
Right.
They would spend their entire day briefing him.
Well, and she also mentions that later. She says she doesn't always go into this much detail, and she probably provided this much detail because Dr. Phlox was coming. And that's why we're here on this day rather than any other day, because this was the important day, and this is why she had to recap so much of it. This is a real life medical instance. There was a guy named Henry Molaison, and in 1953 he had a surgical procedure that took away his short-term memory. He could not commit new facts to long-term memory, and he died in 2008, which 55 years of having to update him on information, including the death of his parents, and waking up to a body that's 50 years older than how you went to sleep the night before. They must have had all kinds of contingency plans for how he woke up and how he reacted to his body that morning, so they knew how to handle. They knew how to approach him and what to say.
I would love to know, is there any adaptation that happens right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get any better at that as a person if you do have that where you can't develop new memories? Is there something that gets left behind, some sort of, I don't know, like afterthought, or you know what I mean? Like, because memory isn't just short term and long term. There's got to be some in between.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's right, and it's amazing though. I mean, this clearly went on until his death in 2008. People had to explain to him what date it was and what had happened since 1953. So, like, because of him, they were able to do a long-term study on memory and that sort of thing. But what's interesting about it is kind of exactly that. Like, were there ever any moments where he had remembered something from the day before, and was it lost again after a couple days, or you know, did he pick up little things here and there over the course of the 55 years, you know, or was it literally hitting the reset button?
Or any skills that he could sort of get better at every day.
Right.
Maybe it was origami or something where he could to him, it would be the first time he was practicing it. But he had actually been practicing it for 15 years and just could be good at it. Like, he would pick it up really quickly. Like, I wonder if that was a thing.
Yeah. I don't know, like muscle memory you're talking about?
Yeah, or just, you know, because you kind of load stuff in. Like, you get better at stuff as you age, not because you remember how to do stuff, right? You're not remembering how to, you know, brush your teeth or whatever. I can't think of an example. But
right.
As you do more stuff, your body gets better at doing new stuff,
I
guess I should say. Except if you're someone old, over the age of 50 and trying to learn how to check your email. Apparently that's impossible. Anyway, yeah, I mean, also what a horrifying adventure to be that guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you wake up and you are old, and it's sort of a mystery that never gets solved.
Right.
Part of me is like, oh, that would be interesting, but it will only be interesting once or twice, maybe 3 times.
Well, but here's the thing: it would
always be the first time. Yeah, right.
Anyway, so we're to Paul's recounting.
Paul keeps recounting, and we kind of go into a flashback, I guess. Well, I guess we should say. So the way that this happens to Archer is he's hit with some sort of anomaly that they actually don't really go too deep into as to what caused. That was one of my bigger problems with this episode is, well, we'll get to it at the end.
Well, maybe, but what took me out of it was the fact that Vulcans are physically stronger than humans. Like, that's just a biological fact in the Star Trek universe. So I felt like it should have been the other way around, where Archer had got pinned and she came over and pulled the beam off of him. And, you know, somehow with him being pinned down, he contracted the parasites.
That would have been better, but then it wouldn't have indebted her to him.
But it could have been that he shoved her out of the way, you know, and that's like,
that's true.
Had she been there, you know, she would have been crushed or something, and like him pushing her out of the way. I never understand like how the person takes their place in the same spot. Like,
why can't you just both go that way?
Well, that, and also like when I push you, I have pushed back as well. So I'm not going to be in the exact same spot. I'm not, you know, right. I'm not an unstoppable force and an immovable object at the same time. Like, that's not how it works. So if he pushed her out of the way, or maybe he did, like he pushed her out of the way and like went forward as well, and that's how his leg got caught. And if she had been standing there, she would have been crushed, you know, type thing. But anyway,
it also seems like that the anomaly was engulfing the entire ship. So I don't know how she escaped. Like, did that anomaly just go down one hallway and then stop at the end? Like, I didn't understand the mechanics of how this whole anomaly worked.
Right. The impression that I got was kind of like a sweep as well. It wasn't just it hit him, but, you know, maybe it was... Didn't he get a concussion?
He got a concussion, but I thought that's just because he fell down.
Well, right, but maybe like his concussion is what attracted the parasites or something. But I'm also, you know, trying to provide information where there was none given.
Yeah, we're rewriting the episode. Yeah. As long as we're at it, what else does Janeway do in this episode? Can we just give her something? We just have her show up? So there's a moment where, okay, so T'Pol says, look, we can't keep doing this. I'm going to resign my commission and go take care of Archer, right? Mm. And they build in this sort of aggravation between Skip and T'Pol that they're sort of tired of each other. And once again, we're confronted with this weird residue of some kind of relationship between these two characters that we don't seem to be landing on ever in any of the episodes that we watch. I'm guessing that it happens because we've only seen season 3 of Enterprise for some reason.
True. Yep.
maybe this is going to be fleshed out in season 2, but I guess maybe they're doing a great job of maintaining this sort of, these people had a relationship, but they're no longer in it.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. But the other part of it, too, is she's now in a different position, whereas before her orders were almost, kind of suggestions to the captain, and he would consider them. Now she's giving direct orders. And, kind of like he said, ever since they lost the captain, it's been one bad move after another.
So T'Pol, long-haired T'Pol, is recounting when the aliens raid the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of cool-looking aliens. They actually really reminded me of the aliens from Galaxy Quest.
Yep, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I have something to say about the entire Star Trek canon, right? It happens in every single show where there is an episode where bad guys board the ship, and there is a shootout in a Star Trek hallway, like there's a phaser shootout, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there some sort of mechanism built in, countermeasure to incapacitate bad guys if they are intruders on your ship? Because in the Star Trek world, the computer knows exactly who you are and where you are on the ship if you have your communicator badge, right? And so why aren't there phasers built into the hallways where it will just start shooting people who aren't supposed to be there, right? Stunning them. You don't have to commit mass murder. Stun them. But why isn't this built in to Star Trek hallways? Is it because the script doesn't say, like, it seems like this is a no-brainer.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I mean, yes, your answer that you just gave at the end is why, like, because it would ruin way too many episodes. But I mean, even going beyond that, like just recognizing unknown life forms in the ship, they immediately get shielded off. Like in Next Generation, they had those hallway shields that could go up.
But those always seem to happen manually. The computer doesn't seem to recognize that we should stop these people who are shooting crew members.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you kind of have to instantiate them by yourself.
Right.
So I don't know. That just kind of, I don't know. Maybe I just get bored with these a room with a hallway, these hallway shootouts. I'm just like, do we have to watch this again? To
be fair, for like Enterprise in the original series, Enterprise for sure, they hadn't experienced anything like this yet, and they barely have the technology for shields, and their phasers, I mean, maybe they could be built in, but there's no way that they would have set up their ship by now to have the scanners and phasers. The original series, maybe, but I also feel like it was a ship built for exploration. It wasn't really a warship. So at some point they would figure it out. But I feel like with Enterprise in the original series, the Enterprise for sure, the original series, maybe, but by Next Generation, absolutely.
Well, Next Generation should have definitely had gas cloud containment vessels to capture gas clouds. It's like, based historically, we run into a lot of these things. So we're going to need a way to stop them.
Well, so there's two ideas on Kirk's missions and why we follow them. They're either par for the course, and so like it's just, this is what happens when you're out in space, or they're so outlandish that they get completely ignored by the Federation. Yeah. Like other missions go to a planet and like do a quick scan and they go down and find life forms, and Kirk is sending back missions where he saw Abraham Lincoln in space and they had to fight him and Genghis Khan, and they're like, oh, okay, no, that like if you keep telling these stories, you will be decommissioned.
Maybe I should do it. I want to write what Kirk's report would have been to the Federation on that episode. Anyway, so in that same kind of scene where T'Pol is talking about these aliens, what are they called? The
Xindi?
Xindi. Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say that. I started before you, but you ended before I did.
Yeah. I rushed through it. You're right.
So at the end of that scene, she reveals to Archer that there are only 6,000 humans left. And then Archer proceeds to give the hammiest performance. It was equal parts Ace Ventura and Randy from South Park in terms of how they handle bad news. He just starts stumbling out, and he kind of he's like, I wanted him to like drop down to his knees and lift his arms to the sky and scream no.
Zindy!
I guess, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how I would react if I just learned that there were only 6,000 humans left on the planet.
You literally cannot process it. Like, he should have walked out and, like, just kind of stumbled around. Like, it shouldn't have been as, like, anguished as he was. Like, first off, he's not entirely sure it's all true. And second off, like, you literally, like, imagine learning that whatever, like, more than 99% of the population is gone. First off, you don't know that many people, so, you know, like, it's a statistic.
Yeah. Well, it would have been so much better if it was understated, right? He receives the news. He's totally stoic and unmoved.
Right.
He goes outside, and the last thing we see before we cut to black is him kind of falling against a wall and lowering his head and taking a breath.
Right.
Cut to black.
Oh,
right?
my gosh, yes.
That'd be so much better and so much more emotive than, no!
Right.
Not again! Full
wrenching
lights!
his sleeve. Yeah.
Anyway, pretty melodramatic.
Yeah. Poor Papa Archer.
Papa Archer. Volky Archer. But by the way, what if the show had continued from this point? They magically gave Archer the ability to create new memories, and the show just started from here.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Like, it would have been a boring show.
6,000 people.
Fascinating.
Well, yeah, 6,000 people. You have to sort of, and maybe at the end of the season, like that's it. So this should have been a season-long arc.
Sure.
This is episode 2 of the season, right? Where Archer learns. And then the entire season is them learning A, how to get his memory back, B, how to get these things out of his hippocampus, whatever. Obviously, what will happen at the end of the season is they restore time to the way it was. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been so cool. Instead, we got this, which we'll get to. The ending was stupid. That's what I'm building up to. The ending was dumb. It was terrible. But wait, we're not there yet. I have to build up more anger. So,
okay. So Phlox shows up soon after that.
Yeah, Phlox, my favorite. He wasn't in the show as much as I was hoping. Much to my chagrin, and your not chagrin. By the way, doesn't it seem like chagrin should be like happy because it has the word grin in it? Like, much to my chagrin, I was completely satisfied.
I agree that it should be a positive word because it does sound happy, but I feel like
sounds happy.
The way it's used in sentences, I feel like doesn't, like, much to my surprise, is really the only other phrase that we have that used that way.
I guess that's true. So then what happens is Archer goes back to Enterprise, which I guess has been patrolling the area.
But I've been wanting to say, like, so the commercial break ends with her saying, "We're going back to the Enterprise." And then it cuts to somebody listening to our podcast.
That would have been awesome. It's just somebody sitting in the chair listening to our podcast. Similar to how in whatever Next Gen episode we were watching, where it's just Picard in the holodeck reading the paper.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Manhunt.
Manhunt, right. Sorry that I forgot that wonderful episode. They go to the Enterprise, and this was a very weird scene because it's acknowledged within the episode that Archer says, to me, I just saw these people an hour ago.
Uh-huh.
Yet when he comes on the Enterprise, he's hugging them as though he's not seen them in 25 years, right? It's like this nostalgic, happy time for him where he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're hugging, and it's like, you just saw them. Like, they're not hugging you, you're hugging them. It was weird because he later says, "I just saw these people an hour ago. That's why it's weird for me." And then he sees Skip, who is, I feel like, the best old guy now, like in terms of makeup. But I was like, yeah, that looks like what that guy's going to look like in 25 years, right?
Definitely better than Malcolm, but yeah.
Malcolm looks like he's wearing a James Franco goatee Halloween costume.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, it was not good.
And I also like the idea that he comes aboard like this once a day, and they have to pretend like they haven't seen him for 25 years.
Going out a little bit off that, I liked how Hoshi, the only thing that they did differently was give her a different haircut, but she looked older with that haircut. She
seemed older.
Yeah.
Okay, so Skip, there's this moment where they're like, "Hey, the treatment works. We have to keep doing it." And Skip's like, "No, we can't do it because we need the energy for the shields or the weapons, and so we can't do it." The answer is no. And I kind of agreed with Skip at this point.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
there's no the conceit is that, okay, the scans that I took over the last 25 years of Archer's head, when I removed these parasites, they're gone from the past, right?
Right.
And so that leads them to believe that it will somehow reset the universe because somehow Archer is the key to the universe, right?
Right.
That if he lives or is not incapacitated in some way, then not this crap that happens to us will not happen.
Right.
And they pitch that to Chip, and he's like, no, I don't buy it. Like we're going to keep the weapons online, right? Because it's totally not substantive. Why would they make that jump?
So, I mean, I get it, because if you eliminate all of the parasites, then past flocks will never have found the parasites, and Archer will not have had his memory lost for the last 12 years, which would completely erase this timeline.
That's not what they said, though. They didn't say, well, no, that's not what they said.
I know, I like the pause for reflection. You're like, oh, that's not what they said.
Well, you made sense, but I realized that you were retconning and not actually recounting what happens in the episode. So they say that, hey, we should do this because it will not incapacitate Archer. He will be capacitated. And so therefore...
Recapacitated.
We might have it... He'll be recapacitated, and so therefore maybe this timeline won't happen. That's what they said.
He said it will be like this never happened.
Who said that?
Dr. Phlox.
I don't remember that.
Okay. But Trip is obviously living in the here and now, and he's like, we can't put all our hopes on a what if.
I guess, but in that sense then, because he eliminated a quarter of the of parasites, wouldn't that also have some sort of residual effect on the timeline?
At that point, I don't know, because he may have taken them out of a part of his brain that really wasn't too crucial,
right?
Just to see whether or not it was working.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I felt like that's what I didn't like about this episode was how they resolved it. Is that they couldn't come up with a better way to reset the timeline, right? Connect the parasites to something bigger, and not just, oh, these parasites are in your brain, and if we do that, it'll reset everything. I don't know. It felt very. We're at the end of the episode. I remember thinking and looking at the timer at the bottom. It's like, wow, we have 3 minutes left, and they're still not done. Right. Mm-hmm. How are they going to wrap this up so quickly? And they decided not to.
For me, right, it was kind of like almost like all good things, insofar as, there's this thing that's happening concurrently in time. The only difference being that it started in the TNG timeline rather than the season 7 TNG timeline rather than the season 1. And I guess I don't remember how that all worked, because didn't it originate in the future? But then why did everything reset back to the season 7 rather than the season 1? But anyway, the point being, when you eliminate something that has messed with time, the idea being you would go back to the point where that thing that was messing with time started.
It was very cool the way they killed everybody in the bridge, though, because I don't think we've ever seen that before, where they just ripped the top off the bridge.
Where they peeled off, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Right?
So I guess he blows everybody up. By the way, I don't know, the whole up from the shootout in the warp core engine all the way to the end of this, I was sort of disappointed.
So, right. And it's kind of the problem that a lot of shows have and deal with, is the protagonist is the one in trouble. And when the protagonist is the one in trouble, it completely ruins any suspension that veteran TV watchers would have, because know the protagonist is going to be okay. Like if there was a character that was introduced in the beginning, and it was that side character's issue, which obviously couldn't have happened, because why would we follow that side character? But some character that could be eliminated completely raises the tension, because you don't know if they're going to make it out okay. And I mean, it was kind of cool because Archer did actually die at the end of the episode, but he had done everything he needed to. So
yeah, and it was sort of, well, why not?
Right.
It felt like it almost felt like, hey, I trust you. There was not that scene that I actually at a certain point was expecting, where it was somebody had to trust Archer, even though he was very untrustworthy at that point because he had a disease.
Right.
to say, this is more important. This will fix everything. And they decide not to, and he's ultimately left with the choice, without a choice. They're going to be boarded, and they're going to die anyway, so might as well do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or like at the end, he actually didn't complete the process, but it did create it would create an explosion to do this. And the Xindi decided that the Enterprise was archaic technology, so they didn't need it. So they decided to detonate it by setting off that explosion. So like he did not succeed in his mission, but the Xindi actually finished the job for him by accident, which would eliminate the timeline. Something along those lines where they kind of did that by killing Archer, but again, being an episodic TV show where characters always survive, you knew that it would reset at the end. Yeah,
it would have been cool. And like in my mind, I was like, how could they have made this so it was interesting? So you kill Archer and you make the Enterprise be fine, right? Enterprise is fine. Archer's dead. The Xindi are boarding the ship, and you're like, oh wow, this is interesting. They're going to leave it like this, and then you see a sort of a montage of what happens to the ship. Right? You show them stripping the ship down for stuff they can use, throwing bodies into the corner, and then towing the Enterprise into a sun or something like that.
Right.
And the sun, you know what I mean? And like you show a little readout of like the subspace implosion or whatever they said they needed. And then it happens. And then it eliminates. Like, right? Like that would have been more interesting in terms of just him succeeding in blowing up the ship.
Right.
But then comes my least favorite scene.
I want to know why you didn't like it.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the pillow drawer.
Okay.
There is a drawer apparently in sickbay entirely dedicated to a singular pillow.
Okay.
Okay? It just goes downhill from here.
See, I kind of took that as like a pillow Pez machine dispenser. Like every time.
So a new one it's resupplied every time you close the thing? I see. So there's an unlimited number of pillows.
I mean, there is finite, but it's in the thousands. You're never going to finish it. It's the best Pez dispenser ever.
Do they reload it somewhere in the back? I guess they'd have to. I don't know. Like, you didn't tell me if it's reloaded manually by a person or if the computer is like regenerating it. Well, it's important to know.
Right. It's a little bit of both because you obviously the computer doesn't take the pillows, so you do have to put those pillows in the return drawer where it's then sterilized and refitted and then put back into the Pez dispenser.
Oh, you don't think they just incinerate it and make a new one out of like, I guess they don't have
replicators? Yeah,
do they have replicators?
That's all over the place. They didn't have them in the original series. They did have them in Discovery. They have something kind of like it on Enterprise. Okay. So, yeah. So
this is another thing. It dissolves from the exploding Enterprise into Archer asleep, right?
Yes.
Why not, instead of showing the Enterprise exploding from space, why not show the Enterprise exploding around Archer, right? Mm-hmm. And so the second that the explosion is sort of engulfing him, and the second the explosion gets to him, there's a hard cut to him like opening his eyes,
right,
in sickbay, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be way better than just the iMovie dissolve from one shot to another. I don't know. It just seemed very clunky to me.
Right.
I thought it was well directed. Robbie McNeil.
Oh, was he the one who directed it?
I think he directed it. Yeah.
Oh, and good old Paris.
So, yeah, maybe he showed up because he thought it was a Voyager episode, and he had the old script, right. And they said, "Well, we don't need you anymore for that role, but maybe you could direct it." That's what happened.
It would amaze it, like just if he gave himself a cameo
as a baby, very small baby.
Yeah,
but with the uniform on in front, like while driving something, like driving a ship, because he's a grid pilot.
Yeah.
So then they have this back and forth of like, "Hey, T'Pol, you'd be a great nurse one of these days." She's like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
Which is, by the way, more dialogue than is said in the scene. And I felt, this is how you're going to end this. This is how you, like, why not have there be some sort of residual memory of something, right? Have there be something that connected them, because they've spent the last 25 years with each other. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that Archer was wearing a diaper and that she had to clean that up too, right? Like
because he lost his memory. He didn't lose motor function, and it's been over the last 12 years, not 25.
Well, we don't know that.
We do.
yeah, well, I don't mean motor function, but he definitely lost, like, he was definitely incontinent. It's very clear. It's very clear in this episode. I don't know how you... Anyway, point being, they've shared a lot, right?
Right.
And, like, it would have been a nice moment if they had some sort of thing where in the scene where Archer wakes up in the future and T'Pol has long hair and she does something for him like, oh, would you like your tea with sugar and cream? And he's like, yes, how did you know that's how I liked it? And so when he wakes up in sickbay at the end of the show, she says, here's your tea, Captain. I know that you like it. And then he says, how did you know that I like that? And she's like, gosh, I don't know. I've never made tea for you in my life. It's like, just have that moment.
Right.
Why do you need to have the misogynist moment?
Well, yeah, and neither of them have any memories of what happened, which I thought was interesting because I thought for sure Archer would keep his memory of the initial attack or like the next day or something, I guess. No, because if his memory is only up to the attack, then he wouldn't have. Oh, no, because he was just told everything. So I thought that he would have that day's memories because the parasites had been removed. And so he would remember that one day in history or that one day in the future where he was relayed all these events. And so he would know what to expect in, like, at the very least, the upcoming weeks because he had just been debriefed on it. But apparently the idea was because it was in an alternate future, there was no need for him to remember it. So he doesn't remember any of it. Which
is, I mean, I guess logically makes sense, but not as interesting as if there could be some sort of, like I said, residual something.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely logical when we're dealing with chronoparasites and an alternate future. Like, you definitely don't want to write yourself into a corner.
Oh, and it's so easy not to, when you're dealing with chronoparasites.
Right. I mean, just unlimited options. But okay, so how insulting is Archer at that moment? Like, she has no recollection of anything. Like, he maybe has like a vague passing feeling of like kind of a dream thing where she was taking care of him and like he had that gratitude for her or something. But he's telling his first officer, who's a lady, you'd make a really good nurse. Like,
meanwhile, the actual nurse in the background is like, dude, dick.
Right? Runs off sobbing.
I just changed your diaper. At least,
yeah.
That happens when you get a concussion, right? You immediately need a diaper.
Yeah, that's usually, well, yes. Immediately. It's just always
the episode ends.
Gets immediately, yeah, with that side comment. I just changed your diaper. Been a long road.
Yeah, it's oh God. Every time I'm surprised, by the way, when that starts and I'm watching it on Netflix and the guy starts singing, I'm like, oh, right. I forgot about this terrible section of every show.
I am so sad. Like, I don't understand why they have not had an opening monologue to any of these shows since TNG. I personally really enjoy those opening the opening monologue. Like, I think it just is a great way of setting the scene for the show. And I wished when we heard Enterprise was coming, I was hoping after DS9 and Voyager that they would go back to having a monologue because it was the Enterprise again. And they did. It was just in song.
Maybe if they just had Archer narrate the lyrics, maybe that would have been better.
No.
Over the song.
No. Like, I mean, I was thinking like maybe, but you know, like he's like, it's been a long road getting from there to here.
You're right. Nope. But I can see why they didn't do it or why they stopped doing it. It did sort of date the show in a way. When Next Gen did it, it was a reference, right? It was an update.
Right.
But I guess I can understand why they didn't want to just keep doing that. Because what are they going to say that's different?
Right. I mean, for Voyager, it would work great. It was kind of her empowering speech at the end of the series premiere. Like, that's what I thought they were going to use. Right. And just kind of edit that a little bit and have her, actually re-record it. But it explains what's happening in Voyager, and it brings everybody up to speed instantly who's coming into Voyager on the very first time.
Space, where our continuing mission is to kill individual crew members one episode at a time.
Well, that's not what she said in the opening episode, but that's the gist of it.
Oh, really? I could rewatch it. Refresher.
So, all right. So that's the episode. And the thing is, there were two elements of ethical and moral dilemmas in the episode, but they weren't discussed or even debated. It was just, the moment with Trip, with them saying, like, we have the ability to turn back time, and Trip was like, I can't base my decision on that. Like, if they had drawn that out a little bit more, where, obviously they said they needed X amount of time to do so, and he said, I'm sorry, we don't have that time. And they said we would if we could draw the power from the weapons, and it was actually a discussion and not a, no, we can't do it, never mind.
He runs out of the room after, no, we can't do it, never
la,
mind.
la, la, la. Right. But because,
and
like,
high fives himself.
Yeah, one more archer down.
Yeah. Self 5.
But because it wasn't presented in that way, I can't really say that was like a quality moral ethical dilemma. And I know that the argument is like it doesn't matter how much I like it, it just matters whether or not there was one. And that's kind of like what we were saying, that we can just objectively decide. But I feel like just because the question was posed doesn't necessarily mean that it was part of the episode.
So I had a different, I guess, interpretation of our criteria.
Okay.
I felt that T'Pol's decision to handle Archer, like to take care of Archer,
right?
How she handled the Archer problem,
okay,
was sort of a moral choice. It wasn't really a dilemma,
right?
I mean, I suppose it was a dilemma for her because she had a commission of captain, and then she gave that up,
and she gave up returning back to Vulcan to do so. Yeah, so it was definitely almost a life debt, which I thought was far more than what he did for her.
Indeed, and I don't think that it was really explored. I don't know how much bearing that has on this being a proper Star Trek episode, but it was an expression of morality that I don't know if you would expect from T'Pol or I guess a Vulcan. It seems like a very emotional reaction to something like that.
No, that's fair. It was,
so it just wasn't explored maybe enough. I mean, I guess that would be an argument against my argument.
But it was explored far more by having the Vulcan ambassador come, and say, like, you don't need to be captain, like, we're giving you this, and she said, no, my time is here. And then Trip later says, you don't have to do this, and she's like, yes, I do. Like, it wasn't explored as well as it would have been in TNG, but I would definitely say that was explored. So, I mean, this was a great episode in general, and so for me to have that ability to give it the ethical and moral dilemma, like, I like that you brought that up, because otherwise I would have missed it. So I'm happy to change my vote from no to yes.
Yeah, I was yes all the way. I thought it was a great episode. I was disappointed. Again, I'm disappointed by its potential. No, what did I say before about another episode where its potential made it good, almost? Yeah, well, then, it's both. It's both.
Yeah, we've had both so far, and it seems like Enterprise's running theme is its potential made it bad.
This had great potential. Like I said, it could have spawned an entire season,
right,
of stuff.
So maybe that's what it was. Maybe Voyager had potential which made it bad. I think that's what it was.
It did,
but Enterprise, like,
fractured.
Yeah, Enterprise has these good episodes that provide so many things that could be great, but the episode by itself is still good. And for Voyager, like, the episode is disappointing because of the questions it presents that aren't explored.
I agree.
Well, nice. I would say this podcast episode, was definitely one worth listening through the whole thing. The fact that we started with a no at the beginning, and you were like, yeah, I could say no too. And then you provided that point that I hadn't considered, which switches it to a yes. So yeah, Enterprise has, we still got to get our chart up so we can see how many we are for solid episodes of Star Trek with Enterprise.
All right, let's figure out what we're watching next.
Yeah. Obsession! Season 2, Episode 13 of the original series. Captain Kirk obsessively hunts for yet another mysterious cloud creature he encountered in his youth.
We're somehow getting... either all of the episodes have clouds in them, or we keep landing on the cloud episodes.
Right. Yeah, I'm very curious how many have a mysterious cloud. Obviously, for special effects, it's one of the easier ones to do, so I get it.
still,
Right.
it's a lot.
Yes. And just so everyone knows, the blurb does not say yet another. It's just of the 6 we've watched, I think 4 have had a mysterious cloud. So we were so close. We're 2 episodes away from the trouble with tribbles.
It's so far away.
I know. Like we're never like this is the closest we're gonna get in years.
It could be. It could be literally the last episode we ever watch.
Yep.
All right. All right, let's go watch it.
All right.